We acknowledge the original owners of the land on which we podcast, whose stories were told for thousands of years. Today, we are recording in Meanjin. We pay our respects to elders past and present who may be listening. Sovereignty was never ceded. A quick note before we get started that today's episode is a bit different. We have a special guest, Abbie Jane from the Rainbow Shoelace Project. She shares her story in a beautifully raw way. This includes words that some may find offensive, but it is part of her experience and we felt it important to leave it in. As usual, today's episode also includes swearing, so take care of yourself and you have been warned. You're listening to What in the NDIS Now, a podcast where I, Hannah Redford, and my friend Sam Rosenbaum interview participants and providers about all things NDIS. Welcome to today's episode. I'm really excited to talk to our guest today. We are doing something a little different today, and since it's my podcast, I can do that. So we're taking a break from our usual programming to speak with Abbie. Hi, Abbie.
Hi. So nice to be here.
Oh, I'm so excited. Ever since I found out about what you're doing, I've been really wanting to get you on our podcast. So can you tell me exactly what it is that you do?
Yeah, of course. It's a long story and there are lots of different parts of the story, but I'll go with the most basic to start with. So I grew up in a small town in regional New South Wales called Broken Hill. It's really isolated from the rest of Australia. And I was feeling really alone, and like I couldn't find other people like me. I was hearing generalized homophobia, and that made me really scared to come out because I thought I would just make myself a bigger target. I had originally had rainbow beads on my shoelaces just because it was a small way to show who I was to the world, and it made me feel really, good that I got to look down and, see rainbows. But when I got to high school and heard all this generalized homophobia, I immediately took them off because I was like, I can't have these on because people are gonna, see them and just I'm gonna become more of an outcast than I already am. And then I was talking to my mum, and we basically just thought to ourselves, why should I have to take off these beads because of other people's closed minds? And then it turned into a bigger picture of there are so many young queer people in Australia that are feeling alone and isolated, especially in regional towns. And so I thought, why not, instead of taking these beads off my shoes, why don't we get them on every queer kid's shoes in Australia so no one feels alone? And our main message is that you normally see rainbows when you're looking up in the sky. And when you're experiencing homophobia, transphobia, and bullying, you tend to look down and hide yourself from the world. And just by looking down and seeing rainbow beads on your shoelaces or someone else's shoelaces, it will remind you to look up again and be proud of yourself and be who you are.
I love this so much. So what is your organisation called?
The Rainbow Shoelace Project.
Oh, amazing. That's so simple and easy to sort of understand. I love this idea so much, and especially from a small country town. And we do talk about that a fair bit on the podcast. For example, it's really hard to get really good services in regional areas. And we definitely know that being queer in regional Australia is really tough, and it shouldn't be. It should be the same as in the big cities. That's silly. Okay, so we have it in a nutshell what this is. So can you tell me what age were you when you started the Rainbow Shoelaces Project?
So I was 12. I was 12 years old. Um, so I guess it's a scary time for anyone. It's a scary time for anyone. I was just starting high school, you know, in this small town where I just felt so judged by everyone. And that obviously amplified because I am queer. And that just makes me even more alienated. Yeah, it was really tough being so young, but also trying to manage a like worldwide project at the same time as going through high school.
And you're still in high school. So how old are you now?
I'm 15 now, so in year 10.
Oh my goodness. I think this is amazing because I struggle to do these things and I'm almost 40. And so I think you are phenomenal. And I'm so excited that there are young people like you out in the world.
But I think there are so many of us, but it's just about giving us a voice, giving us a platform to actually speak our minds. I think it's especially hard in regional areas because your creativity, your ideas are often shut down by other people. It's kind of just black and white in those type of towns. It's if you're different, then people don't like you. You know, if you have big ideas, then, you know, you're going to be pushed to the side and people are going to try and, you know, trample your ideas. Yeah, it's really hard, but I think it is really hopeful. You know, I've met so many young people, you know, from doing the Rainbow Shoelace Project that, you know, come to me and say, look, I really want to start a project of my own. I have these amazing ideas and I just, you know, I just feel really inspired by you. And that honestly makes me so incredibly happy. And it makes me so proud that there are young people out there that, you know, have the drive to change the world because that's what we need.
It's so exciting. And I think that, yeah, often young people can also be dismissed and people can go, what do you know? You're only 12 or 15. What could you possibly do?
No, I completely understand that. And yeah, trying to amplify your voice when you're so young, it's so difficult. It's such a journey to have to go through. I'm really fortunate that I had a mum who, you know, amplified my voice for me and, you know, helped me so much along my journey because she believed in me and she knew that, you know, I had potential and so she did whatever she could to, you know, help bring this crazy idea into a reality. And I think that it makes me really sad to think that there are some kids out there that don't have that support at home. They don't have a parent who's, you know, going to support them like that. So I'm really grateful that I've grown up in an environment where I can speak my mind and, you know, my ideas can, you know, turn into a reality.
Yeah, so you have these rainbow beads and people can go on your website and they order them.
Yeah. So that's an option. You know, you can order, you know, however many bead packets you want, or you can order a kit, a bead kit, which has 100 of each colored beads sticked onto it, 50 bags and 50 paper inserts, and that makes 50 rainbow beads. It also comes with a poster. So if you wanted to, you know, kind of get the Rainbow Shoelace Project in your local area, you can order a kit, you can pack the beads yourself, and then you can stick them onto the piece of card and, you know, put them up at your local, you know, shopping center, which is really interesting and special to me because how I started the Rainbow Shoelace Project was I had an A4 laminated piece of paper, you know, saying take one for a friend, these beads are free and lace them onto your shoelaces. And I had about 6 packets of beads attached to that poster, and I stuck it up at my local Woolies notice board. And that's the first ever, I guess, that was the beginning of the Rainbow Shoelace Project, which is insane now to think that we've given away over 350,000 packs of beads across the world. To think that it just started off as a little notice board in Broken Hill and now it's gone global is something that I could have never imagined happening.
That's phenomenal. That's so many packages. Holy moly. So you give these beads out for free, is that right?
Yeah, so it's always been something that I've contemplated just because this project is self-funded. We get the occasional donations, and for a while it was being covered by donations, but at the start and currently it's being fully funded by my mum, which is insane, and it just shows how much she believes in me and how much she cares for the things that I do. It's really amazing. But it's always been really important to me that I do keep them free, because I obviously started this project when I was 12, and you can't get a job when you're 12, and I just thought of all those kids that might not be able to ask their parents for the money because they might not have supportive parents. So it's always been really important to me that I keep the packs of beads themselves for free. We do charge shipping for, anywhere that isn't our local area. But that's just because we wouldn't be able to cover the beads themselves and also postage.
Well, that's exactly something I was thinking of, particularly when you said they're going out worldwide. Some of those shipping costs can be huge.
Yeah, tell me about it. Tell me about it. But I would say one of the main, reasons why they've gone global is actually because we've had people visit Australia, have found out about the Rainbow Shoelace Project and have brung beads back to their original country, or they've been from Australia and they've gone traveling and they've brought beads with them. I know one of our big supporters, Danny Minogue, when she was in London filming a TV show, it was I Kissed a Girl. She bought a huge bag of beads and just gave them out to all the crew and stuff like that, which was amazing. Yeah, so I guess it's really help from our supporters and help from people that, think this project is amazing, that, go out of their way to share this project with their country. It's really amazing. So we've got beads. I'm going to try and remember all of them. We've got South Korea, Canada, America, England, Germany, New Zealand, the Czech Republic. So random. Also, our beads have been to Antarctica as well.
What?
Yeah, I know. So this organisation, Planet Dwellers, they're a queer travelling company, and they had a pride cruise go to Antarctica, and all of them had rainbow beads on their shoelaces. So our beads have stepped into the snow of Antarctica, which is pretty insane. It's very crazy. It just shows, I guess, how much one person can do. And I think, and don't get me wrong, at the start, I thought to myself, I'm just a 12-year-old in Broken Hill. What can I do? I can't make a difference because no one's going to listen to me. I can't reach anyone. I can't, I don't know how to amplify this message. But it just goes to show that hard work and time and passion can change the world, and it can, make a project go worldwide, which is absolutely insane.
Exactly. I found you on LinkedIn, which is not the usual hanging out place for 15-year-olds.
Yes. So I will be super clear with you. I didn't even know what LinkedIn was before I started the Rainbow Shoelace Project. But it was Mum's idea, that because we often look to find corporate businesses that we can connect with to either, share our project into their, local businesses, or, their massive corporate, offices and things like that. We also, try and look for a corporate sponsor, just because obviously funding is really tight. But I would say LinkedIn has found us more connections with businessy type people. Whereas Instagram, and TikTok and things like that have helped me connect with younger people who can resonate. And it just goes to show that all different platforms are good for connecting with all different types of people. And I'm very grateful to be able to have had that social media platform, because without it, the Rainbow Shoelace Project would not have been able to spread the way it has and would not be possible. So, yeah, I'm really thankful that there are, as much as social media can be a really bad place, which I know exactly about that, I would say that I have had more positivity and, good things come out of social media than bad.
I'm so glad. That is really good. I think LinkedIn is really good for what it's, the being a business sort of geared social media. What was the response in your town of Broken Hill to the Rainbow Shoelace Project?
It's a really it's a question that goes really deep. And, I think it's so important for me to talk about, the lows of the Rainbow Shoelace Project as much as it is to, talk about the highs, because it's not all just rainbows and sparkles. It's been a really long journey, and it's been a journey that's shaped me as a person for the rest of my life. So in Broken Hill, obviously it's very small, and people kind of have a set way of how they think things should be. And if you go out of that, ideal, then, they will hate you for it. Once the Rainbow Shoelace Project started to gain popularity, once I started doing more advocacy work, I started to be a victim of immense homophobia in my high school. It all started May of 2022, when it was Ida Hobbit Day. I spoke to my principal, and I said, hey, let's put the pride flag up for one day. And we put it underneath the Australian flag, just for the day. Because, I was like, we never see rainbows here. We just see red dirt. Like, there's no representation whatsoever. So I thought, just for this day, let's do it. So I was standing there with the principal and putting the pride flag up, and this massive group of like year 10 boys, I was in year 7 at the time, by the way, just started yelling at me like, take it the fuck down, you fucking faggot. Like, we don't want that shit in our school. Like, and that was the first ever interaction I'd had that made me genuinely terrified to go to school and walk down the hallways. I wish I could say it stopped there, but it literally amplified so much to a point where I literally, to the end of term 4, no, the start of term 4 in year 8, I literally was not going to school. I couldn't go to school. I was so depressed and so, just my mental health had declined so much that I literally could not go to school, because it was hate online from people from school. It was, verbal harassment at school. It was rumors being made about me. It was, people taking photos of me at school without my permission and like posting it. It was people like everyone just hated me so much. And it was just like, I couldn't walk down the hallways without being called a faggot or something like that. Like, it was so like dehumanizing. It was so dehumanizing, because people who I had never even met hated my guts because of things people had said about me, just because I was queer and just because I was, giving queer people a voice. Fast forward to May of 2023, when I was in year 8, it was Ida Hobbit Day again. And I was like, okay, I'm going to try and make it like a tradition that we put the pride flag up on Ida Hobbit Day. So this time, got permission from the principal, but I did it alone. I put the pride flag up alone. I was standing there alone, like hoisting the pride flag up. And like, before I knew it, like 40 kids of all ages, boys and girls, were just like crowded around me and like just like screaming. I can't even make out what all of them were saying, because it was just such derogatory things. Like, you know, they were organizing someone to like take it down. They were like saying that they wanted me to burn in hell and stuff like that. Like, it was just so much abuse in the course of 5 minutes, and I just had to like run. Like, they were all circled around me. I had to like run to the deputy principal's office. And I think the worst part of my whole situation was I reported it to the principal. I reported it to the deputy principal. I reported it to the police. I reported it to the education government. I reported it to the Minister for Education. I reported it to the local member for education. And literally that whole time, nothing happened. Not one thing. Kids did not get punished. Like, and, you know, I would have kids throw pieces of paper at me, like, saying, like, kill all the fags and stuff like that. Girls would follow me into the bathrooms and, like, say really horrible things while I was in the stall because they knew I was in there. And yet no one ever did anything about it, and no one treated it like it was serious, where it literally ruined, you know, I thought that there was no light at the end of the tunnel. I couldn't imagine myself getting out of that situation because it was the only high school life I'd ever known. Yeah, so that was really, really hard and really scary. It got to a point where I literally I had no choice but to move away. I couldn't stay there. You know, my mum spoke to my granddad about it, I'm really close with him, and he literally said to her, he said, if we don't do something about this, she's not going to make it to year 12. Like, it's so bad that, like, if we don't do something, she's going to be dead in a few years. And so over the summer school holidays, we made the spontaneous decision to move me up to Port Macquarie to live with my auntie, and to go to a new school. And that was the best decision we ever made, because not only am I at a school where, you know, I can be myself and, you know, I don't get bullied. It's also, you know, just a completely different environment, a completely different community here. Like, people are so much more open-minded. It's such a larger area, and, you know, to top it off, it's heaps closer to, you know, places like Sydney. So I'm able to, you know, experience going to events and awards and things like that in person rather than having to Zoom in. You know, it's just it literally saved me moving away, and I'm so glad I got out of there, because there was a time where I thought I'd never get out of Broken Hill, but I did, and, you know, it's been the best decision I've ever made.
Thank you so much for sharing that. That's really awful, and it is so wonderful how well you are going now, because no one should have to go through that for any reason. And I do understand that this sort of thing does happen every day in all sorts of schools. And it's so heartbreaking to hear your story. I did want to really quickly explain to people who might not know about Ida Hobbit Day.
Yeah.
Because that was a really critical part to that bit of your story. And I know not everyone, like, being in the queer community, we know what a lot of us know what it means, but others may not. So are you able to tell us the acronym?
Yeah, of course. So Ida Hobbit Day stands for the International Day Against Homophobia, Biphobia and Transphobia.
Amazing. I can never remember it. So
I've had to tell that story so many times. It's just like embedded in my brain now.
Yep. Okay, fair. Good point. Amazing. Okay, so I think this is amazing to have beads that sort of identify you, but to others as well, so that you can kind of go, you are not alone, here's me. But I also wanted to say that the school my young people go to, the school dress code, uniform code, I don't know what they call it, doesn't allow for beads on the shoelaces. So I wanted to ask you about that, how you've gotten around that kind of thing. Have you gotten around that kind of thing? What happens?
So the new school I go to is actually a private school, and it's very, very, very fancy, very flash. And yeah, no, the uniform, like we have to wear ties and like stuff like that, like and blazers and stuff like that. So you could imagine that wearing rainbow beads on shoelaces is not exactly a part of the uniform agenda. But, you know, I guess at some point I will fight for it. But at this moment in time, I'm just so grateful that I get to be in an environment where I can just exist and not be hated for it, that I don't even mind. For me, I just, have rainbow beads on my every other pair of shoes other than my school shoes, and just whenever I'm just being myself in public and things like that, I'll always have beads on my shoelaces.
Okay, I love that. That makes total sense to me. Okay, cool. So one of the biggest things we want is to say donate to the Rainbow Shoelace Project and sponsor them if you've got sponsorship money available. Come on, people, we can do this. So what else would you like us to know about the Rainbow Shoelace Project? Or you? Like, you are phenomenal and amazing. I'd love to know all about you.
So I think it's really important to say, as a result of the Rainbow Shoelace Project, I was actually Claire Thompson, who is a children's book author, reached out to us on social media after seeing our story. She basically creates children's books based on real life kids' stories. And she reached out to us and she said, I think that this would make the most beautiful children's book, and I would absolutely love it if you would work with me and co-author a book with me about your story. So 2 years later, after we had that consult, the book is now out. It's called Abbie's True Colours, and it is like the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Like it captures the whole essence of the Rainbow Shoelace Project so perfectly. And so the book itself is aimed at 4 to 8-year-olds. So it's basically the story of the Rainbow Shoelace Project, but very simplified, very watered down. It doesn't even mention anything about queerness. It mentions about, being proud of who you are and being a supportive person to other people. And I do want to mention, just really importantly, that our beads aren't just for people in the queer community. They are, we really, strongly advise that allies wear them as well, because, our beads represent a safe person to go to. So it's really important that allies, hop on board and, show their support, with the Rainbow Shoelace Project as well. But, our book is, it's the most amazing thing I have ever seen. And getting to hold a physical copy of my own story and my own experience and my idea that I started, knowing that it's published and that young people around the world can read it, it's a really surreal feeling. The illustrations are beyond beautiful. They were illustrated by Elliot Bulpett, who is a non-binary artist. It's been published by Owlet Press, which is a queer publishing agency. And obviously I'm the co-author and I'm queer as well. So it's a very authentic, ethical, source of, queerness. Yeah. And it's just, it's perfect for any kid, queer, straight or otherwise, to read, because it just talks about, being kind and, showing your true colours and, accepting others for who they are, and being brave. It's all about being brave and, giving other people the courage to be brave. Yeah, so it's a really special part of my story. And yeah, it's a really beautiful book.
You also do you give a lot of talks
Yeah.
to people. So tell me a little bit about how they kind of come about and sort of what you kind of talk about when people invite you to talk.
So, as we were talking about LinkedIn before, a lot of our connections from corporate places that, want me to talk in front of, their workers and things like that do find us on LinkedIn. But I have been invited to be a panelist for TPG Telecom for Vodafone. Zurich as well. I went to the Zurich headquarters and, spoke in front of them. But also being able to speak at like the Pride in Practice conference has been really amazing. And honestly, I think that businesses and corporate places look to me, one, because I'm a young person, and they find it really important to get the future generations' opinions on how to create a safe workspace for everyone. And they also, I guess, it's one thing to say you're an ally and, to say that you're supportive, and then it's another thing to actually go through with it and actually genuinely show your care and support. And by, I guess, getting a queer person, a queer young person to speak in front of, their entire team and their CEOs and things like that, it shows that they are listening and that they care. So it depends. I do there are two separate things that I kind of do. I can really shape and grab the really sentimental, personal parts of my story to kind of, say to people, because that kind of is a really big wake-up call to corporate places that we need to be doing better. Homophobia is still a really large issue in Australia and in the world. And, we need to, it's a call to action really, that, businesses need to create a safe environment for queer people who might be working for them or who might be, going to their business for support and help. But also I do talk about the whole perspective of what I, as a queer person and a young queer person, would benefit from seeing in the future from workplaces, and what makes me feel supported when I go into spaces that are queer friendly and things like that, or talking about how to create a project, how to spread your message, how to go global with something. I guess just there are two different parts. I've got my professional side and I've got my personal side, and normally for corporates I try and mash them together as much as I can, because I think you can't have one without the other. They're really important, and I don't ever want to just talk about the success story of the Rainbow Shoelace Project and have people think, oh, that seems easy, anyone can do that. But in reality, there's a lot more layers to just the success. It's actually been really difficult, and it's really tiring, and the burnout can be really bad. And obviously the bullying side of things has been really impactful and horrible on me, and has affected me for the rest of my life. So I think it's just really important to be real with people, because people connect with me because I am vulnerable, and because people can relate. I don't try and, put this fake persona that I'm a certain way. I'm just completely authentic, and I'm just Abbie, and I'm like, yeah, I got bullied, and yeah, the Rainbow Shoelace Project is really bloody tiring, but it's also really beautiful. So I think it's important to just be you.
I think that's so great, and I'm so grateful that people do ask you to do that. And I think it is really important to understand what helps queer people feel safe when they enter your space, your shop, your office, whatever it is, and to understand that from someone with really good lived experience is so, so important. I'm so glad that they are asking you to do that.
Yeah, me too. I always get really excited, especially because I'm so young as well. Like, the fact that they value what I have to say is really, really special.
Absolutely. I think the kids are going to be okay.
Hopefully.
Well, I want to thank you so much for coming on our podcast.
Of course, it's been so fun. I've really enjoyed talking to you.
I'm so glad because I have absolutely loved talking to you. So thank you so much. And everyone, go and look up the Rainbow Shoelace Project. The links will be in the show notes. Until next time, bye. That's it for today's episode. Please like, share, subscribe, or follow What in the NDIS Now in your podcast app of choice. Give us a 5-star review so that others can find the podcast. Thanks a ton for listening. We'll see you around.